Have you been suffering long enough? Whether your suffering is due to your limiting beliefs or your outdated identities or your missing pre-skills or your underdeveloped executive function skills, if you're suffering, then you're suffering, no matter which of these is the source of your suffering. May 2nd is the first day that you can put an end to your needless suffering, but only if you're on the information list. Is that you? If yes, that's awesome. If no, I encourage you to get on that information list today so you don't miss out on the opportunity to benefit from the most exclusive benefits and bonuses to kickstart putting an end to your needless suffering. They are only available from May 2nd to May 5th, and only if you are on the information list. In one recent coaching call, a student mentioned that working with me in the program is so much more than just developing executive function skills. It's all about life and philosophy and what it takes to design and create a life worth living according to your real values and criteria, no one else's. It's true. What started out as a program to help adults develop their missing executive function skills has become a transformational program that's helping adults around the world to heal the many, many stories that bind them to suffering. And if this is happening as a secondary benefit, which it is, all the while that they're developing their executive function skills, then that is an amazing benefit of this program. Clearly, every executive function skill lesson in the program has stories attached to it that the student becomes aware of, and not only gets to develop that executive function skill, but to release the suffering connected with that skill and with the others. Students are changing by immersing themselves in the program content and community, emotionally supported by the knowing that they're not alone in their limiting beliefs or their outdated identities, and that together we journey for 7 months from their personal prisons into freedom. Clearly, every executive function lesson in the program has stories attached to it that the student becomes aware of, and not only gets to develop that executive function skill, but to release the suffering connected with that skill and the others. Students are changing by immersing themselves in the program content and community, emotionally supported by the knowing that they are not alone in their limiting beliefs or outdated identities, and that together we journey for 7 months from their personal prisons into freedom.
Welcome to the Living Beyond ADHD podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow-through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
It's interesting that the journey from slavery to freedom in the Jewish tradition has just recently completed itself. It was a week of Passover rituals, discovering our personal slaveries and emerging from them into freedom. Just like those who are imprisoned in our physical prisons and don't have a sense of what it's like to live free, especially if they've been imprisoned for a very, very long time. So it is with my students and with you. Many students have lived imprisoned for a lifetime due to their underdeveloped executive function skills, limiting beliefs, outdated identities, and so much more. All the gifts that reside within them have been held hostage by a lifetime of slavery, I offer them, and I'm offering you, the freedom to walk out of your personal prison and live a very different life than you have for a lifetime. It may feel strange, awkward, a bit unnerving, or even frightening at times to think that suffering is no longer a necessary part of life, that suffering is optional, and we can all learn that we have the power to release our suffering and live fully. Some of my students have been raised to suppress their emotions and not be permitted to feel what they're feeling, or suppress their thoughts and not express them as their perspective. Many have been taught to keep family secrets and not share or discuss what's real and painful and in need of expression and healing. Some had their life planned for them rather than being given a choice. I experienced all of this and more as I grew up, and these experiences no longer define or limit the person I am today. As humans, we have a need to make sense out of our lives, out of the realities that we're living in. We make up meanings and stories to explain what we're experiencing, and since they're made up, they're often hurting us if we don't revisit them and update the narrative periodically. Because all of our stories need to be examined periodically to update them and determine if they are empowering and truly helpful to us in the now, so that we can live the life we envision for ourselves. We haven't been taught that the source of our feelings are our thoughts, and that we can and do think our lives into existence. The problem is that just like working out at the gym and coming home and looking in the mirror and see what you got for doing your workout, you won't see the difference right away. And the same is true of your thoughts. Changing your thoughts to empowering thoughts won't necessarily show you the fruits of your empowered thinking right away, because unlike the speed of thoughts, the manifestation of things in our outside world takes time. It's kind of like fantasy thinking. I can think of being in Hawaii and be there in an instant with my thoughts. If I actually want to physically be in Hawaii, I need to purchase a ticket, get on a plane, fly from California to Hawaii, and that takes time and has many steps to take, from the thought to the actual experience of being physically in Hawaii. And for those of us who have underdeveloped inhibiting skills, we often prefer to fantasy think our lives rather than take the steps, because fantasy is so much faster and immediately gratifying. What are the stories you tell yourself that keep you suffering? These can be stories about your physical health, your relationships, your mind. Just about anything can cause you suffering if your stories are structured that way. And what is the purpose of your suffering? Do you believe that life is about suffering, that you have to suffer to get ahead? What if it's not true that suffering is a part of life? What if what's true is that pain is part of life and suffering is optional? They're different. According to modern psychology, pain is pain, perhaps an unpleasant sensation, and that's bad enough. Suffering is distress and misery layered on top, and occurs when we fight the pain. Think of it as physical pain versus emotional distress. Buddhist teachings talk about human existence being filled with suffering because of us being human, that we take our pains and suffer with them rather than accepting them and embracing them, holding them loosely rather than grasping tightly and focusing on them as something that's wrong and needs fixing. Pain, it's inevitable. Suffering is not. We are the meaning makers in our lives. We get to decide what something means or doesn't mean because we have that personal power. Many of us stay unaware of this power and think that things or experiences come with meanings built into them. They don't. We each add the meanings. All we have to do is ask a friend what their meaning is for something and discover that your friend's meaning is different than yours, or it could be. Well, both are right because we each create our own meanings. Freedom from suffering is possible if you embrace your personal power and make empowering meanings for yourself rather than victim or broken or defective or disempowering meanings. To break free of our suffering, we need to first recognize or become aware of the difference between our pain and our suffering. An example could be the pain of breaking a leg, and the suffering from it could be because we're focused on thinking of all the things that we can't do due to the broken leg until it heals. And even then, we might not be able to do again as we did before. This second part is the suffering that we inflict on ourselves by focusing on what we can't do instead of what we can and how we can, and being grateful. Our suffering is caused by reactions to the inevitability of pain in life. Human suffering can take the form of anxiety, depression, fear, confusion, grief, anger, hurt, addiction, jealousy, frustration, resentment, conflict, stress, obsession, unfulfilled creativity, unrequited love, divorce, and more. And there is suffering beyond us as individuals. There is our collective suffering, such as greed, hatred, ignorance, war, racism, isolation, and torture of prisoners or slaves, hunger, sickness, and abandonment of human beings on every continent on this planet. We must be willing to acknowledge and accept the truth of the pain, so we need not suffer because of it. Pain is definitely a part of human life and is woven into our very existence. The ebb and flow of life gives us pain and pleasure, gains and losses. We encounter praise and blame, success and failure. And when we release our judgments and reactions and indoctrinated ways of reacting, we're free to not suffer, but rather to recognize and acknowledge the pain for what it is and determine what we want to do about it, if anything, and what we can do. Whether it's personal pain, whether it's the collective pain, we get to decide. It's our decision. In recovery circles, we're taught that acceptance is the answer, that if we believe that some person, place, or thing is wrong and not as it should be, according to us, then we will suffer. And there is no possibility of serenity until we release our judgments about this. Life is as life is, and much of life is painful to be with. However, we do have the personal power to make meanings out of the pains of life, such that we are empowered to live with them or do something about them as the situation may warrant for each of us. The suffering comes from the struggle. If we release the struggling and neither resist what is nor cling to what is, we avoid the suffering and the struggle. In this way, we can quiet the mind and be able to see with wisdom if we have such development and live in harmony. We have to face the pain, our pain, whether it be in our bodies, minds, or pain in the world. We must stop running away from pain because that causes us to suffer and be trapped. We can only find freedom when we accept the pain and sorrow of the world as it is and make meanings for it so that it allows us to live in the world with empowerment. I don't mean to live in ignorance and block it all out, as this is avoidance, not acceptance. There is a therapeutic modality called DBT, or Dialectical Behavior Therapy, and its main goals are to teach people how to live in the moment, develop healthy ways to cope with stress, regulate their emotions, and improve their relationships with others. I see its premise is being about dichotomy or paradox. Life is not black or white. There are many shades of gray. Pain and pleasure can coexist rather than one or the other. A situation can be both painful and beneficial if we can see and accept this coexistence. This leads me to the celebration of wins. For those of you who have been longtime listeners, you know that I'm big on wins and their importance in your life. There's another important aspect to focusing on wins, and that is that you're training your mind every single day to notice what's right with you, what's right with what you're doing, and what's right in the world. In other words, wins. And especially during a time in our history, our world history, when it would be easy to ignore what's right or good or amazing. This is exactly what we need to be focusing on to keep the level of positives within us high, so that it can offset the high level of negatives that we're bombarded with every day. How you experience your life and the meanings that you give the events of your life contribute greatly to the quality of your life. We don't always control the events or the experiences. However, we do control the meaning that we give to them. Remember, nothing has any meaning except the meaning you give it. So be mindful of the meanings you give your experiences so they can empower you. Simple phrases to keep top of mind are, what you focus on grows. Be mindful of who you're becoming on the way to where it is that you're going. Stand guard at the doorway to your mind and don't let in things that don't serve you. You are a precious child of the universe and are called a human being, not a human doing, for good reason. You don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you're being, not what you're doing. So what's it going to be for you today? You got your free copy of 13 Signs Weak Executive Functioning is Holding You Back? Congratulations. That's a wonderful first step. You got on the information list for the Adventures in Achievement Foundation Skills program so you could learn about how you can develop those executive function skills that you're missing. Awesome win, because freedom is on its way to those on the information list on May 2nd with an exclusive invitation to receive some significant bonuses. If you've realized that you don't have all the time in the world to transform your life into the one that you want to live, that's fantastic. Each one of these wins deserves your full-hearted celebrating. None of this half-hearted celebrating like, yeah, Dr. B, I had some wins today. Big deal. You've got to mean it. Yes, wow, awesome. I have wins to celebrate, big and small, and I'm celebrating myself big time. If that's you, that's awesome. So how much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast episodes and transcripts. Great free content, plus information on programs and products, including the groundbreaking online Adventures in Achievement Foundational Skills Training and Coaching Program. You can also learn about Dr. B's masterclasses on decision-making, time management, and banishing procrastination. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
So what stories are you dragging along throughout your life, weighing yourself down and holding yourself back from the happiness and success that you deserve? Remember, we are the designers of our lives, and we make up everything. Nothing has any meaning other than the meaning we give it. It's really quite magical. Let's look at 5 common stories that people have and what you can do about them, because they are most likely causing a lot of your dysregulation and stuckness. First, I am not enough or good enough despite my giftedness. I am so far behind in my life, I'll never catch up with my peers. I can't commit to anything because I know that I'll break my word and flake. I'm the only one who's as trashed as I am. I'm filled with self-shame. I can't even do the basics of life. How can I go for more in my life? The first thing to understand about these 5 storylines is that they're just stories. Stories that you made up out of the thoughts that you've been thinking. There are so many stories that you could make up about the events or the outcome in your life, and these are just some of the negative and hurtful ones. And the reason that you keep having these experiences and reinforcing these beliefs and storylines is because you continue to tell yourself the same stories over and over again for years on end. You do have the personal power to choose a new story, an empowering story, and you probably don't yet know how to do that, but you can learn because it's a skill. The fastest way to free yourself from the suffering stories that you're telling yourself and living is to reframe them. Here's some possibilities for you. I am not enough or good enough despite my giftedness can be reframed into I am all that I can be today, and I am enough for me today. I can be more tomorrow if I choose to expand and grow. I am so far behind in my life, I'll never catch up with my peers. Here's a reframe. I am where I am now, and I need to decide where I want to go next. I can't commit to anything because I know I'm going to break my word and flake. This is a possible reframe. I choose to commit and choose to program my future with the intention of keeping my word rather than flaking on myself or others. I'm the only one who's as trashed as I am. I'm filled with self-shame. Here's a reframe. I can focus on all the way in which I'm doing well. And the more I focus on this, the more self-worth I create within myself. I can't even do the basics of life. How can I go for more in life? Here's a reframe. I am open to learning how to do the basics of life so I can continue to go for more and more growth and expansion. If you feel more space around you, more freedom in your mind and heart from the reframing examples, choose another statement of your own and reframe it to see if you again feel more space and freedom. Reframing is a powerful tool once it becomes a part of you. I want you all to know that there is real hope for resolving the stories that bind you to your suffering. Releasing your limiting beliefs, updating your outdated identities, developing the pre-skills that lead you to better executive function skill development, and then developing your underdeveloped executive function skills are just a few of the ingredients in real hope. The widespread needless suffering of millions of adults around the world has to stop, and I am doing what I can do to stop it with this generation, with us. You can take action on your own behalf and develop yourself as an adult and stop your needless suffering. You get a choice. Just because no one else has told you that you can do this doesn't mean it's not true. And just because other adults are having tremendous success changing their lives doesn't mean that they're the only ones who can do so. You don't have to believe that these things can happen for you. However, you do need to engage with what will bring them true for you. You will come to believe soon enough if you do that. It's time for you to learn how to be the person who lives the life that you say that you want, not continue to struggle to live the life you say you want so you can become that person someday. It's amazing how much healing takes place when you develop the skills you're lacking. It's priceless. And if we can't plan, organize, prioritize, get started, and keep going until the end, or regulate states of overwhelm or conscious focusing, we won't be able to make good decisions and know when we make good decisions. The load of disempowering stuff that keeps us stuck as gifted underachievers is heavy and costs us dearly. So please slow down and become a student of your own life. Understand what you need with the multifaceted brain that you have. Take action on what you learn about yourself. This is the life work that lies ahead for you if this is your time. You came to this lifetime with an empowering gift, and I would love it if each and every person on this planet were able to express his or her unique, empowering gifts freely, without the threat of being shamed or criticized. Let's put an end to that stigma once and for all of us to live as empowered achievers. A favorite quote or two today of mine. Carl Jung said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." He also said, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." What these two quotes mean to me is pretty simple. Acceptance is the answer to my serenity, and thinking is the answer to stop judging. I'm curious what these two quotes mean to you. Whether you're learning from my podcast episodes, free resources, or working with me directly, I want you to live your best life, if that's what you want for yourself. I can't force you to live your best life. However, I can encourage, push a bit, if that's what you need from me, and even rally the closed community of your fellow travelers to support you as well. However, the choice ultimately remains with you. You get to choose to continue living as the gifted underachiever or decide it's time to upgrade to living as the empowered achiever and all that awaits you in that life. So, here's the exclusive fast track path for today. Make it a priority to get your copy of 13 Signs Weak Executive Functioning is Holding You Back. The link's in the show notes. Next, get on the information list for the Adventures in Achievement Foundation Skills Program to learn how you can build your executive function skills and strategies the Dr. B way. Link is also in the show notes. If you are tired of the struggle of being the gifted underachiever and the shame you feel about it, the time to act is now. This requires that you take contrary action, which is the opposite of what you would typically do. It means getting online now rather than when you get around to it. Why? Because there is an exclusive opportunity that's on its way to those on the information list. The opportunity will be in your inbox on May 2nd and is only good for a few days. And that is if you're on that opportunity information list. To benefit from the opportunities that come your way instead of missing out on them, you need to get out of the habit of being the gifted underachiever, or you're going to miss out on this exclusive opportunity and many others in your life. It's literally 2 steps that you need to take that are going to take you all of about 5 minutes total. Is 5 minutes too much time to spend to radically change your life? If it is, I guess you really don't want to radically change your life, and that's okay. If you want a place to hang out with like-minded listeners to my show, you can ask to join the Living Beyond ADHD Facebook group. Be sure to be mindful when asking, meaning you need to answer the few questions we ask so that you can be approved into the group. Otherwise, you won't be approved. It just won't happen. And once you're a member of the group, be sure to visit often and engage with us, because joining and never visiting doesn't help you at all. This is about you following through. Make it a habit. The Facebook group is not a training group, although there are great posts to learn from and a supportive community to surround yourself with, and that's worth a lot. As a member of the Living Beyond ADHD Facebook group, you will hear about training opportunities too. If you're on the information list, you will hear about training opportunities as well. However, you do have to open and read your emails regularly in order to know about these exclusive time-sensitive opportunities that I'm offering you. I promise that we won't flood your inbox with tons of emails. However, when we do send them, they have important information in them for you, so be sure to read them if you're seeking transformation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share this podcast with others. I would also be grateful if you'd rate the show and write a positive or inspiring review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. That helps the ratings, and more people like you will get to know about the show and be helped. That's you making a difference in the others' lives, and that means a lot to me. So, are you ready to stop your needless suffering and free yourself from your personal prison? Have you had enough of prison life? Be sure to check out the show notes for the links and opportunities available to you. There are real solutions to the challenges that you're experiencing. Time is our most precious asset, and none of us has time to waste on solutions that don't work. I would love to help you realize a new freedom. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you're eager to make positive changes in your life and stop overwhelm and confusion from derailing you, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love learning in an online group environment with personalized coaching or prefer the pace of guided self-study, Dr. B offers the skills, strategies, and individual support you need. Get started on your journey today by visiting the website at drbarbaracohen.com.